Wait, is this thing on? Can y'all hear me? Okay, here we go.
Woo! Just a dash. Just a dash. Just a dash. Just a dash.
Welcome back to another episode of Just a Dash. It is raining outside right now, and I love it because it's just the most soothing sound. I don't know about anybody else, but I actually really love rainstorms. I find them to be incredibly comforting, especially when I'm trying to get to sleep. I'm a night owl, so a rainstorm is the perfect way for me to just like get comfy and, just find like a space where I can just feel cozy and relax. So I love a good rainstorm. It's raining in New York, and I feel like it's also like, hello, spring. Spring is finally here. That's what it feels like, honestly. But I am, as always, so excited to be back on the mic. It's crazy because it'll be a month of Just a Dash, y'all. Only 3 episodes because I do it every other week, but it's been really cool and really exciting. The way that I just feel doing this has just been so eye-opening. If you are, on the helm of pursuing a passion project, if you are on the crux of taking a leap, even if it's not a passion project, if you are on the crux of doing something that really serves you, and it frightens you, do it. Do it anyway. And I wouldn't consider myself to be a risk taker by any means, but I'm learning to become one more and more, and I'm finding a lot of joy in that. I'm finding a lot of joy in doing what serves me and showing up in spaces that make me happy and removing myself from spaces that don't. But with that being said, y'all, all that sprouted from the rain. Do you see how my mind works? All that sprouted because I said I love the rain. But it's crazy. A lot has happened in the last few weeks. A lot of good, a lot of bad. And as always, because that's how the world works, you take and you give and you receive, and all these different things happen in between. But something I wanted to start off with was the Grammys, because it's been a very long time since I've watched an award show. And to be honest, that was before quarantine even started. I was the person who used to watch a lot of award shows. I would send out the reminders alongside, all the different sites that people could watch it on, including the bootleg sites. I'm not even going to lie. I'm not even going to front, just to watch the pre-shows and all the in-between commentary, because I feel like the thing about award shows is that they're really exciting, especially if you're really into what those awards are representative of, right? So, for example, I really love the Oscars because I love film. I love movies. I love storytelling of all kinds. So I always loved the Oscars. I always loved the Tony Awards. And I always loved the Grammys because I just, I love music. When I was 19, my very first tattoo was an anchor with a music note wrapped around it, a treble clef on my ankle, because I was basic, but also because I loved music, and music grounds me. So I always really enjoyed, watching the Grammys. And I guess that's also where they started to lose me a little bit as I got older. Because when I was younger, I had no understanding or awareness of politics that exist in almost every industry. You don't know those things as a kid. You don't even know those things as a teenager. And it's one thing to see petty drama unfold in these weird celebrity silos that we goggle at, essentially. But it's another thing when you realize that colorism or sexism or just the constant pressure to keep up with the American image of success, that approval, that influence in so many art forms, it starts to dry up the creativity of the talent of an artist, whether it be music or acting, directing, dancing. I think you kind of sometimes see that and can't see the joy anymore. And I think I got to that space. And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. It's just that the reality is learning more about the systems that exist and learning that they need work. It creates this slow aversion to pop culture. And it's not entirely gone, y'all, by any means. I be checking in on what the Kardashians are doing because, a cringe moment for them gives me another opportunity to side-eye. And that is truly one of my favorite hobbies. And shout out to my Virgo moon, because it's really my Virgo moon that be making me side-eye. But that slow aversion to pop culture is actually a result, I think, of recognizing things more. And I think that's attributed to learning about PR. I got my master's in public relations. It's actually why I moved back to New York, I should say, since I was born here. And I think once you see behind the scenes, for a minute, award shows lose their glamour and they lose their glory. And you just see the flaws of it all, But here's the thing, it's 2021, and honestly, while the world still feels like it's tipped incorrectly on its axis, I really think creatives are thriving in the world right now. And I'm here for it. I am here for it. I just want to say, that despite the boo-sha-sha that sometimes clouds the beauty of many of these industries, I am really freaking grateful for music and how it's a healing tool in this world and how it has been used as a statement on so many issues that have taken place in the last year or so. And I can say that too because I actually watched the Grammys, y'all. Yes, this year in its entirety, which was weird because it was different and not just because it was structured to abide by COVID regulations, Which, side note, as an event planner, I'm seeing a lot of backlash and criticism about how the Grammys were structured and organized and how it was weird having, all these artists on a stage staring at each other performing. Let me just tell you something. As somebody who works in events, I need people to really chill because they have no idea what it takes to put on an event. And to me, it was pretty well organized, for trying to transition back into an in-person event. And, I saw comments on Vulture and NME and all these other online articles, but y'all really be underestimating what's at stake when putting these productions together. And if you think the hiccups on TV were bad, you have no idea what hurdles they were probably managing behind the scenes. So I thought for all it was worth that the Grammys was actually pretty well done in more ways than one. Because at a certain point, the Grammy, I guess he's the boss of the Grammys. I don't really know. His name is Harvey Mason Jr. And he appeared with a video message and he acknowledged completely the criticisms that have been leveled at the Recording Academy as of late in relation to sexism and diversity, the typical things these companies be getting in trouble with. I can't say I remember everything that he said. And naturally, I'm pretty well aware that a team of writers worked to make sure that it was a statement that would resonate with the public at large. But even then, I have to say, as a person who could read between the lines, I guess, there was some genuine accountability there. And I'm here for that energy. So just for another quick round of highlights and lowlights for me, Trevor Noah is a gem. I saw his usual criticism in relation to his jokes. And that man is funny and truthful. And that's all about, that's what we need right now from a host. So if you're not into it, I'm just kind of like, that's too bad. Beyonce making history, obviously a highlight. But also, maybe I'm a little far-fetched in this thinking. But I think Beyonce might be a little over all the fawning over her. I'm pretty sure sis is just trying to chill with her mans and her kids and bless us with a life-altering project every now and then. And it was really intriguing for me watching Meg Thee Stallion fawn over her because she's like a celebrity among celebrities. And the fact that that layer exists, is this even the final form? Is this the final form? It's just, it's wild to digest that. And speaking of Megan, that solo performance was fire. And joining in on Cardi B's fun definitely delivered. Clearly, I think we're moving into this direction of oversized inanimate objects. And I'm kind of confused about that trend. And I'm kind of like, okay, that's giant stiletto heel featuring a strip pole inside of it is pretty meta. And I'm here for it in the best ways. And, Cardi B and choreography, they're not always the best mix. But, sis killed it. I think she did her thing. Which, in terms of people doing their thing. So Dua Lipa... or Dula Peep, she definitely served up what she could. But one of my roommates said it best, actually. She said those dance breaks are trying to make up for what might be a lack of a personality. And that's not me being shady, y'all, because I actually love Dua Lipa's music, but I do think maybe there's just this weird way they're trying to market her so that she's digestible. I don't know if I'm really explaining that well. We can get into that another time, but I would say the same thing about Ariana Grande. The only difference is, sleeves can blow. I always call Ariana Grande sleeves because them shirts always be hanging beneath her fingers. But I don't have any lowlights really that stick out outside of DaBaby's performance. I don't know about y'all, but my household, we were very confused by the choir of elderly white men and women bopping up and down to rap lyrics like they were hired for the cookout. It was not it for me personally, but I guess that's the tea nowadays, is having a choir in the background. Like, I'm not here for that. And I'm not here for the trauma performances, where we're showing like black people getting shot and police, throwing people on the ground. I don't know. That's just not my energy. It's not for me. I find that to be just triggering. So there's that. The other thing that I wanted to kind of just chat about a little bit before we get into word to the wise, because I've got a word to the wise for y'all. That's pretty short. I always got a word to the wise. The only other thing I want to talk about is I absolutely did not watch Fake and Famous, y'all. I know I said I would, but I got a day job and shit is getting hectic. And also, I was chatting with a friend about it and she was like, you're not going to miss anything. It's really, actually more disturbing. So I know I recommended it. I'm curious though, like if y'all watched it and you enjoyed it, please, comment, or send me a DM or whatever the case may be. I'm happy to like be convinced to watch it because I was into it. And then when she was explaining it to me even further, I was like, yeah, I don't know if that's my vibe. I don't know if like I'm trying to be more disturbed by what the internet, makes space for. So there's that. And then I also watched the Britney Spears documentary. And, I'm going to touch base on this in the recommendation room because I've got a lot of thoughts. And they're definitely in support of Britney. So let's just hashtag free Britney, just to clarify. But, I definitely want to recommend that to y'all. And I want to dive into it a little bit deeper. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Right now, though, that's my recap on the Grammys. I know I'm a little bit late because it's every other week. But, if y'all, agree or felt a type of way or you didn't like the Grammys for whatever reason, let me know. I'm down to chat. I'm the person who definitely wants to hear you up in, in my DMs talking about how you feel and your opinions. So there's that. But let's get into word to the wise, y'all. So this week's word to the wise is actually from Jane Goodall. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with Jane Goodall. I think a lot of people know her as the woman who like worked with the apes, or who works with the apes, because Sis is still alive. Sis is still doing her thing. But my sister actually adores animals. And my sister, one of our favorite shows growing up was The Wild Thornberrys. That was one of our favorite just like shows to watch. And my sister always reminded me of Eliza Thornberry because she just had this beautiful connection with animals and she was never fearful of them. And I remember there was an episode where she was featured. Jane Goodall was featured, obviously not my sister, but she was in The Wild Thornberrys, and I like looked it up because I was curious. I was like, did I make it up? And she was in a 2001 episode called The Trouble with Darwin. And, I just started thinking about, why I love Jane Goodall. And I think, while I do love the relationship she has with animals, which I'm the sort of person, y'all, people who know me know this. I do not like birds. I'm just going to make that statement very clear. Birds and I are not friends. They're too unpredictable. I'm not here for it. Shout out to Kingsley, a YouTuber who literally made a YouTube video that said, I hate birds, because I relate. But I would never want any animal to get hurt, and I would never want to cause harm to an animal. So I really actually appreciate and really admire people who do conservation work with animals and who just try to understand other beings, outside of humans. I think we when I say we don't live on this planet alone, that also includes animals, and we're animals, but it includes other animals. So I always I always admired Jane Goodall. And as I did more research on her, I didn't realize that, she did all this, she had no formal scientific training. And she was able to establish so many different breakthroughs with research and understanding animals. And she was always really unconventional about it. And as a woman in her field. And as someone who, didn't have formal scientific training, she dealt with a lot of backlash because she didn't have this specific university pedigree and she had an unusual approach. Like, people found her methods to be soft, y'all, and problematic. And, it's because she was naming the apes that she was working with. She was forming relationships with them. She was getting to know them outside of this space of just seeing them as creatures that are meant to be subservient to people. And I think that's just so cool. But anyway, all that to say, I love Jane Goodall, if you couldn't pick that up. And the quote I have from her today is so simple, but it's one that I personally live by. It's one that I think continues to come up in the conversations I have with people thus far, and really is just a mantra for how I try to move through public spaces. And this is the quote, very short. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. I really don't think there's much that I can add to that, because I think about people and moments and situations where sometimes I think people detach themselves, where they think that there's no domino effect into what they're doing. There's no way that, a choice or decision they made is going to have an impact on anyone, whether that's, them deciding to stay in their room all day, to them, cheating on someone, to them buying a certain piece, to them making a certain comment online, to them, showing up in their workspace and deciding to be kind and to make space for others. Like anything you do in life makes a difference. And I don't think we need to see that as some sort of pressure to behave a certain way or to make sure we're perfect all the time. Like, I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's just being conscious of the fact that you don't live on the planet alone. And that whatever you say or you do, or the way you choose to express or not express yourself, that energy, it's all being collected and recycled and connected in, these very intricate ways that, we should be more conscious of. And be more conscious of, so that when we do make choices, when we do make decisions, that they are happening in healthy, balanced ways that are, A, allowing you to show up and be the best version of yourself, and B, allowing you to recognize what doesn't serve you, what decisions being made around you, what differences being made around you are not serving you or are serving you. And this quote made me think of this book that I really love. I guess I'm doing recommendations throughout this entire episode, who knows? But this book I really love called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. And I'm sure it's a best-selling novel, so I'm pretty sure people are aware of this. The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. So I've read this book several times because I just thought it was the most intriguing way for people to think about the connections they have to each other. And basically, just to give context, this man ends up dying. He dies in old age. And before he can get to heaven, he has to meet 5 people. And he doesn't have to, but that's like the journey, is he goes through 5 different people. And these 5 people are basically who he had the greatest impact on in life, or vice versa. It's just whatever changed his life, whatever changed the course of his life, or led him to make certain decisions, or led him to making certain differences or changes in his life. And it was such an intriguing book because, one of the characters is not someone who he knew. It's someone who, by proxy of a choice he made, it made a difference in their life. And so it takes me back to that quote, because whatever you do, what you do makes a difference. And you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. And when you think about that on a grander scale, I got real intricate with it, y'all, because I just tend to have that habit. And like, I'm saying that's not overwhelming, but I'm sure it is in some ways. So let's just think of it on a grander scale. If you just think to yourself, I want to be kinder to people, or I want to be a good person. That's it. I want to be a good person. It kind of ties back into the mantra where I think to myself, make good choices, be good people. And it's interchangeable. If you're sitting down and you're really thinking about, how can I be good? What does that mean to me, first of all? And what does that require in the spaces that I show up in? I think right there that starts dictating how you look at things, the perspective you have about people, the way you show up in a space, the way you acknowledge people, and not just the people you like, but the people you dislike, the people who frustrate you, the people who aggravate you. What difference are you trying to make? And is it one that's serving you? You know? So I think there's just so many ways to slice and dice up this quote and apply it in different areas of your life and really ask yourself that question. What difference are you making? And what difference do you want to make? So that's your word to the wise from Jane Goodall this week, y'all. And I hope you really enjoy it. I hope that it's something that gives you a little bit of food for thought. And with that, we're going to get right into, are you for real? For real? Okay, y'all. So let's get into Are You For Real? I had to take a swig of my tea, always. So I know I had mentioned this before, but this is really, I think Are You For Real is the segment that I can't do with every episode, because this is definitely where I highlight different things in the news that have captured my eye and I share my opinion on that. But sometimes what's happening in the news is really heavy, and it's really a lot for even, I think, for anyone to process, you know, regardless of the space you exist in or the identity you have. But I think sometimes as an empath, it can be even more visceral to hear certain news items. And obviously in the last few weeks, there have been multiple shootings that have taken place in Atlanta and in Colorado, the latter of which one of my friends, you know, was not impacted, thank goodness, directly, but it was very much near their home. And so it's just kind of crazy when you think about just the 6 degrees of separation that we have to these experiences. And it just, you know, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds, because I think speaking about the shootings themselves, it's a lot. It's heavy, and I think those are things for people to process. I think there's enough content out there speaking to those situations and how we can show up and be better allies to each other. And I encourage everyone to go out there and do so, and also learn about the intersectionalities of why allyship can be tricky in certain situations. And I am very much speaking about the AAPI community and just Asian Black relations. I don't think that there's an excuse for us to not show up for one another and to show our support, but I do think that there is a lot to unpack. And actually, you know, I would recommend, so I've had conversations with several friends from different walks of life who without a doubt want to show support, but struggle with the intersectionality of the Black Asian alliance due to anti-Blackness, which exists within the AAPI community. And I think that's, you know, worth speaking about. I don't want to speak about it, you know, in this episode, because I actually think it's a conversation that would be great to have. So hopefully in the future, you know, I can tap a friend to kind of discuss intersectionalities of that. But I do want to recommend, this really is an episode full of recommendations. I do want to recommend, though, checking out this woman on Instagram, and her handle is @Lyneezy, which is @_LYNEEZY. She just does an excellent job breaking down that topic of Asian Black intersectionality and, you know, the areas which we excel and the areas where there's still much more work to do. So what I will say about the shootings, what I will say about the media's relation to the shootings, and this is tied from an experience I had recently. My nickname is Dash. My full name is Dashka. And I don't know if many people know this, but I didn't come up with the nickname Dash. It was given to me by a family member who literally couldn't remember how to pronounce my name. So, or just couldn't remember my full name. Maybe it wasn't the pronunciation aspect of it. But I think for me, you know, I think I was about 13, 14. I was about to go into high school. Dash was a really cool name. And I didn't think about the implications up until that point of what it would mean that people would never learn how to pronounce my name, or they would see it as something difficult to pronounce, or they would mispronounce it, or it was the butt of a joke. You know, I learned to adapt with the nickname Dash because it served me better. And it ties, to my personality well enough. But I'm saying all that because I think sometimes people don't realize that when you mispronounce a name or when you make no effort to say someone's name, it dismisses them. It erases them. And I don't think people understand that. So I'm going to explain, recently I had a conversation with a friend, and, I was talking about how when I was at a clinic, the person, sitting at the desk, when they call your name, they only say my last name. They never try to say my first name, but they say my last name like it's my first name. They'll be like, "Hey, Gabrielle," and it's like, that's not my name, and you know that. And it's frustrating because everyone else around me is being called by their first name, and it's very clear that you're just not making an effort. And that can feel so, so dismissive because your name, it holds a place of your identity. It's who you are. And if someone doesn't even try, it's like people can say Tchaikovsky, people can say Schwarzenegger, like people can say the most difficult names and they don't attempt to say my name, right? So I'm saying that because in the media, so many Asian names have been mispronounced. And I can only imagine the erasure that contributes to, it's just, we have to do better about how we speak about people and how we speak about their identities. And it goes beyond their name. It goes, to the fact that these women that were killed in Atlanta were sex workers, or presumed, allegedly. There's so many different stories floating around. I think at this point it is confirmed. But either way, I think that alone also dismisses them when we're talking about who they were as human beings or what might have led up to the situation. Like there's too much sentimentality that's applied to white people and their experiences that is not applied to people of color and their experiences. And it boils down to something like saying their name correctly and pronouncing it correctly. And we need to do better there. So that's really what I'll say about that. It was a heavy week, I think, for me in that regard. I really get so saddened by the amount of violence and sexism and homophobia and transphobia, all those different things. Like it takes a toll when I think about how many people continue to participate in such harmful behaviors when they don't have to, when we're killing people because of what they look like or because of the work that they do. Like it's disturbing. And again, check out Lene Veni _ Lyneezy. I think she does a great job breaking down the Asian Black Alliance. I kind of, I can't keep going into it, y'all, because it's a lot. And I just hope that we continue to check in on each other. That's what I will say as well. These are difficult times. And even when someone is not directly impacted by something, I think sometimes I'm like, well, it didn't impact you directly. But the thing is, everything impacts us in some way or another. And sometimes, these sorts of things can take their toll. So make sure you're checking in on your own, mental health. Do a wellness check with yourself. And if you need a moment to detach and just kind of meditate or take care of yourself, do that. It's something that I definitely try to put into practice more. The other things that I want to touch upon, I'm going to keep it really brief, y'all. Like, Magic School Bus and Proud Family reboot. That's such a stark difference, and I'm sorry to jump, but, I think it's important to also highlight other things that have cultural influence outside of the violent things that take place in America. And I hope that those things start to change. But transitioning into the Magic School Bus and Proud Family, I don't have a lot to say outside of the fact that if you're not going to do a reboot well, don't do it at all. The Magic School Bus saw the picture of how they redid Miss Frizzle, and I don't get it. Like, what's the point? Like, she was great as she was. There wasn't any need to change it. The only thing that I want to say about that as well is I'm going to check out the show. And I really hope, I'm putting this into the ether, I would love for them to do a Magic School Bus live action film with Tracee Ellis Ross as Miss Frizzle. That would have been doing it right. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, these are beloved children's, shows and stories, and they had great cultural influence, I think, on a lot of young kids from my generation. I know with the Proud Family, I understand wanting to bring these shows into the 21st century. I understand wanting to make them modern for today's kids, but with the Proud Family, it's like they stuck in a character who's an activist, who's biracial, who will be played by Keke Palmer, and who I believe is adopted by a white family. Just that alone, like, you've given this new character, all these complex layers, so that you can tackle issues that you want children to be aware of, but you kept all the other characters the same, which some of them were problematic. Let's start with the Gross sisters, who were literally the color of light. They were like light blue. And I think it wasn't until many of us were older that we realized that that was supposed to represent them being ashy. And like, it's funny, but it's not funny, really, because we're already dealing with bullshit from all other people about what we look like. We probably shouldn't be making jokes like that and think we're children and thinking that it's not going to do anything that like impacts how they see themselves. You know, I think people also pointed out that Dijonay, you know, her in comparison to Penny Proud, who is this light-skinned young girl, their mannerisms are different. The way they dress are different. You know, Dijonay, you know, they make her she's the sassy black best friend, but clearly they're trying to make it seem like she's more ghetto. And it's just interesting how they're trying to couple all those things and then toss in a new character who's supposed to fill in all the gaps that you missed before. I don't know. I haven't watched it yet, but I do think shows that are being rebooted, is that the right term? I guess so. If you're rebooting a show, I just think that there needs to be a lot more thoughtfulness as to not only the audience you're tailoring it to, but the audience that it was created for originally. Because we're going to have a lot to say, and we're obviously going to be part of the audience who's going to at least check it out. Maybe we won't watch it consistently because we've aged out of it, but we're going to care about it. And, you know, even for people my age, there are people my age who have kids, who have families. I'm sure they want to introduce something that was a part of their childhood. And I just think the Magic School Bus definitely killed the vibe with the way they changed Miss Frizzle. They made her like this young teacher. I think they changed the characters. The diversity is different. Like, all this sorts of stuff. Like, let's do better, okay? And in terms of doing better, the last thing that I'll talk about with this is Zendaya, y'all. So, that was such a stark transition once again. Here I am with all the stark transitions, but I'm going to take another swig of my tea. Zendaya is great. I really enjoy her. I really enjoy how her career is just really seamlessly transitioning into this space where as a young woman she can explore all facets of herself and kind of do it unapologetically, because we're starting to create that space for Black women. That being said, Zendaya is a thin, tall, light-skinned Black woman, and I think there are a lot of privileges that come with being in that space that sometimes are not acknowledged in a way that is important, especially for Black women who of our darker hue. And what I mean by that and why I'm bringing that up is because she recently did a film called Malcolm and Marie, which I didn't recommend that film. It's not bad. It's more like vignettes of a relationship. I don't know. I think people are split on it, but either way, I do think it's a great thing to add to her portfolio of acting. But she did, you know, with that, you have to do press junkets and all this different sorts of stuff. And she did a magazine cover. I think it might have been for Vogue. And her stylist, he basically spoke about the fact that he put her in a blonde wig as this sort of ironic twist. Oh, let me back up. The theme of that shoot was very almost like 50s housewife sort of deal. And she was on the cover with her co-star, John David Washington, which is Denzel Washington's son. So they're on the cover and, you know, they look cute. They look great. It was a great shoot, but she's in this blonde wig, you know, and she's got like the whole 50s updo. And in the caption, they're talking about how they basically put her in a blonde wig to do like a twist on, you know, the white women's hairstyles and what they would wear and whatnot. And, you know, and to, you know, pay homage to Black women and how we, you know, how people don't imagine different beauty standards for us, all this different sorts of stuff. I actually, you know what, let me see if I can find it, because it was, okay, I found it. So it was actually W Magazine, my bad. And basically, you know, they say like they wanted to break the conventional idea of white society by portraying a Black couple living a similar extravagant lifestyle. And, you know, Zendaya said, her stylist, La Roche, said the visuals matter. The way change happens is when people can see wealth and grandeur in a way that they're not used to seeing it. And, I
even with the bouffant, he said, her tease bouffant is both a jab at the traditional stereotypes of white women and a way to instantly become someone else. The wig was important, the entire outfit, the stilettos, they don't make the same statement without the blonde hair. And there was something, about them saying, like, the blonde hair was crucial. Zendaya is a light-skinned black woman, and it's not really, like, you're not doing anything new by putting her in a blonde wig. Like, we've been taught, like, black women for years, our hair can be all different sorts of colors, and having blonde hair as a black woman is not really groundbreaking. And I also just felt that it's constantly this conversation about all the things that Zendaya is doing for black women, and she is. Of course, there's a space for that, but I also think people need to recognize that the reason that Zendaya is able to make it so far in Hollywood, and the reason that the opportunity she's being afforded and the platform she's being afforded, is also because she's digestible to white people. And I'm saying that because I think it speaks to the larger issue of how many light-skinned black women take on, and I don't think Zendaya has done this, but I do think a lot of light-skinned black women forget that they need to acknowledge those sorts of privileges about themselves. I've never heard Zendaya talk about the fact that she is a light-skinned black woman and how the subset of that part of her identity is also a factor that needs to be considered when we're talking about race and when we're talking about representation. There's a lot of light-skinned black women out there who are taking on historical roles, even in films, that should be played by dark-skinned black women. If you're playing real people, then you should probably find someone who fits into the greatest depiction of that. And there's just way too many light-skinned women, whether it be Zazie Beetz or Zoe Saldana, even Kerry Washington, who is not, I wouldn't say like an incredibly light-skinned woman, but let's just take Zazie Beetz, for example. She's going to be playing Mary Fields in The Harder They Fall. Mary Fields, she was known as Stagecoach Mary. She became the first African-American woman to root a mail carrier at 60 years old. And, Mary Fields, Stagecoach Mary, was a dark-skinned black woman. Nina Simone being played by Zoe Saldana is probably the worst of them all. Literally, this woman, they had to put prosthetic teeth, they had to change her nose, they had to change the color of her skin. It didn't make sense. And I think it's really important as, whatever hue you are, to kind of be cognizant of those areas of intersectionality. And also, when you're trying to do something that's supposed to be progressive for the community, really acknowledging how much space you're taking up and how much space you're actually allowing for others to take up. It's great that Zendaya is a representative of black women in the community, but, we are not a monolith. And I think, we can praise her, but I think we can also acknowledge the other truth that the reason that she's able to have the platform that she has is also because she is of a lighter skin hue. Now, granted, in this previous episode, y'all, I clearly talked about the fact that Meghan Markle, who is considered white passing to some, that didn't excuse the behavior of other people or the reaction of other people. I'm not saying that Zendaya doesn't deal with any sort of discrimination, that she doesn't deal with the same issues that many black women collectively face. What I'm saying is we have to hold space for all the intersectionalities of identity and how that leads to the success of people and how it might detract from the success of other people. Like, we have to hold space for that, because that's how we have the conversation comprehensively about how we make progress in these different sorts of industries and how we allow space and opportunity for other people to shine. So really, Zendaya is not the issue, but it's more so how we talk about this person, how we highlight this person, what we say about the actions they're taking and the platform that they have. I think Zendaya is a brilliant young woman. I think that her career, I'm excited about where her career is headed. I think she can do a lot more, though, in terms of how she talks about her identity and how she talks about the spaces that it takes up. I think colorism is not spoken about largely enough in the black community, especially publicly, and I think it needs to be. So those are my nuggets for today. I really couldn't get too deep in the weeds, y'all. When I tell you my mind is mush from a long week. But that's it for Are You For Real? And I'm really excited for the conversation that's coming up. It's going to be a great time, y'all. I don't know about y'all, but my relationship with money is that I feel like it's always leaving. And so I'm learning to come up with better ways to approach that framework of and that mentality. And I get to talk with my new friend Maya Williams. And Maya she was fantastic. She is a media professional by day, and she works with brand and partnerships. And it's afforded her, the opportunity to travel the world and really digest how consumers are interacting with content. And she loves that. She enjoys that, and she'll speak to that. But she's also really passionate about equity in education and economic mobility for underrepresented communities. And she spends a lot of her free time serving and volunteering in those spaces that serve those populations. So I really just, I wanted to tap into her mind and her perspective on things related to finance and millennial mindsets with that, and marginalized communities, and how we invest back into ourselves and into the future. And it's just an incredible, incredible conversation. She was just such a joy to talk to, and I'm really excited for y'all to listen. So with that being said, y'all, get your ears ready for Say What?
Just a dash.
So whatever. So this is literally going to be in the podcast.
Okay, cool.
But so thank you first of all for being here. I appreciate it because, I will say, like, finding you, I was like, okay, saw this person in a video, really interested. Do I DM them? Wait, their profile is private. How do I?
Yeah. It's funny because after you reached out on email, I was like, oh, she was the person who was requesting to be my friend, but I'm actually very
I
private.
felt like such a creep.
So like it's me. I grew up as my mother is a pastor, so I grew up as like a PK, and with everybody in my business all the time. And so it's one of those things where
I
if
totally
I don't actually know
respect that.
you, I do try and
keep
it locked down. And I was like, oh, I'm a jerk.
Yeah, no, not at all. First of all, it made a lot of sense because I was like, I'm friend requesting this person randomly. Like, they have no clue who I am. So I was like, maybe let me take the route of asking Avery. And Avery was really great, so, here we are. Thank you for joining me. I will share what we're talking about, but please, first of all, share with the people who are listening who you are, what you do, why you love what you do. And, we'll start off there.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Maya Williams. I work as a brand strategist in media, which is really exciting. I love it. I love the opportunity to elevate a brand or an idea or a person and get people excited about it. It's kind of been my thing growing up. It's just like, how can we make this make more sense to more people? So that's kind of my MO in life in general. That's why I love it. I am a proud born in Ohio Midwesterner. I now live in New York City, but those Ohio roots are very important to me. So yeah, that's me. I love art. I love music. I love media and TV, and I like sharing information.
I love that. And I love that you said all that because that was very much like the premise of this podcast for me. Like, people would always ask me, like, what's it about? And I'm like, it's about all the different things I love, which are all the things that you listed out. Like, that really is like where that idea sprouted from. So it's just cool to be interested in so many different intriguing things because I think they end up becoming so intersectional in all the work that we do and all the spaces that we take up. But so that's very, very cool. I'm terrible at geography. I know nothing about Ohio, but I'm so proud that you're so proud of it. Wish I could say the same about Florida, honestly.
I love it.
But just for everyone listening, so you're actually the first guest I've had that I'm meeting for the very first time in conversation. So I'm very curious at how like this will pan out. It's super exciting. But I came across you. For everyone who's listening, I have a neighbor named Avery, also named Yuma on Instagram, and he did a really wonderful series on Kwanzaa. And I came across your video. I think it's pronounced Ujamaa. And you were talking about cooperative economics. And I was sitting there and I was like listening to it. And I was like, I think this is the first time somebody has used the word divest and I'm not like intimidated by what that means. Like, it was just so approachable, and the way you broke it down and the way that you were talking about, investing back into marginalized communities and like what are the different steps that we could take. I straight up was like, this is a Saturday morning and I'm out here taking notes. Like, this is this is so helpful and informative. And
And I know that Avery mentioned like that is some of the work that you do, in terms of equity, in terms of,
Yeah.
investment and things like that, and just thinking
Yeah.
about finances. And I think
Yeah.
as millennials, it's in general, there's just such a negative mindset about money. I know for me
Hmm.
personally, my relationship with money has always kind of been that it's leaving me. That
Hmm.
that I will forever be in debt, that I will, and that's
Hmm.
changed over time, but I
Hmm.
think it's very easy to feel defeatist, about it.
Hmm.
And I recently read this article. It was talking about basically millennial myths, like, but
Yeah.
specifically, they were talking about the new silent majority, and it was about low income and minority millennials.
Yeah.
And I thought of you because I was like, you were basically talking about, divesting from organizations or companies that you don't want your money going to, and finding
Yeah.
different ways to apply it in other areas where it will
Yeah.
invest for the future, for communities that matter to you. But what was interesting in this article was they were outlining very specific myths about certain millennials. So they were saying that, millennials are characterized as being optimistic and high achievers and very diverse and coddled, but
Hmm.
also, very self sufficient. And they were breaking down how these myths are really tied to, or these characteristics are tied to the majority, which, in a lot of surveys, that's really white folk, that's
Yeah.
young white
Yeah.
millennials. It's not
Yep.
really, there's an otherness that's not included there. And so they were kind of
Yep.
showing the dichotomy of like, yeah, millennials are diverse, but you also in that survey, they're not, half these people didn't say what their identity was. So really
Yeah.
how much of a taste of diversity are you really capturing?
Yep.
So all that to say, here I go being so long-winded as usual.
No, it's good. It's good.
But all that to say is I'm very curious, how do you think millennials measure financial success? That's my first question for you. And I think my second question for you is how attached do you think someone's identity, whether it be
Whew.
gender or race,
Yeah.
is in
Yeah.
playing a role in that success? Which I know those are
Whew.
both like loaded
Those are
questions.
big
So
questions.
take your
Yeah.
time. Take your time.
Yeah. Um, I think the question about identity and money is super interesting, and one I think about a lot. Uh, for me personally, I spent a lot of my upbringing not really thinking about money, and that is probably speaking to my privilege in some regard, but also to how my parents kind of uh, just built up our household.
Mm,
So my parents both grew up in poverty but never knew it, and so my identity was never really wrapped around money or not having money.
right.
And also I went to like a weird art school, and so like it was like there wasn't a there money wasn't an avenue for a lot of people.
Hmm.
And so my relationship with money was only ever like, are you eating and is everybody around you eating? And that has
Right.
kind of been my focal point for a really long time. But I think it's particularly when we're thinking about millennials, um, I think that because we have access to so many ideas of what money can give us and what the lack of money uh, what it kind of brings about in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
like living without, we see that, and then we see our homie who just bought a BMW, and we're like, yo, like why can I buy a BMW? Whereas maybe our
Precisely.
parents, exactly, because maybe our parents never even saw like what
Right.
homie down the street, but we're just inundated with it on social media. And so I think we're having to challenge our identity and our relationship to money in a different way than we ever had before. And every 5 minutes somebody is giving you investment advice on the internet telling you to buy Bitcoin and buy this. And
Truly.
I'm just like,
Not
this is too
Bitcoin.
much.
It really be Bitcoin. And you're just like the deep web now?
Bitcoin.
Like what?
Yes, yes,
Where
exactly.
are we headed? I'm
Exactly.
trying to pay my rent. What are you talking
Right.
about? Like that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
real
so I
though.
don't know. Yeah, I think identity is something that everyone has to measure for themselves. I
Hmm.
don't think we can categorize it as a kind of blanket millennial generalization, as you said, because like who knows who was surveyed in that. And I know that me and my Black people friends are, having to make sure our parents are set up for retirement in ways
Right.
that a lot of other people are not. Or my friends who are first gen or second gen immigrants are having to send money back to their
Yeah.
people in their native land. And so I think it's different for everybody. And I think one of the first things that you can do when you set up your financial thesis for yourself is make sure that you're not comparing yourself to anybody else. And these surveys, I mean, they come out a dime a dozen, and I'm just like, this is not my reality so often.
Mm,
And so, um, I think there is a process that you have to go through with yourself, almost like a unlearning or deprogramming or
yeah,
reprogramming yourself to really get a
absolutely.
sense on what finance means for you.
It's so interesting you say that because so I'm Haitian American. My parents both
Yeah,
immigrated from Haiti, and their
yeah,
experiences with money, my parents were pretty self-sufficient. They, their relationship, they just had to be independent very early on in their life. My mom was
yeah.
working when she was 16, and so
Hmm.
my mother, the way she manages money is it's impeccable in my opinion,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
funny because I think about what I learned about finances and I really didn't learn much growing up. It's
yeah,
not like it
yeah,
was a conversation we were having. I think
yeah,
I made
yeah.
so many mistakes that I didn't have to make had I had someone
Yep,
to give me a little more guidance. And that's not a dig at my
yep,
parents in any other way because they didn't know how to. You don't
yep,
know what you don't know. And so
yep.
it's so interesting now because I think even with there's like a it's like a double-edged sword because I feel like generations younger than millennials, they know how to process all the information so much better than we do. Like in
Yeah,
terms of how much they're receiving and how learning
yeah,
how to manage their finances earlier on or be
yeah,
entrepreneurs. Like everybody is out
yeah,
here being a freaking influencer. And
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. And
it's
making money from
and
that too.
making money and realizing
Yes,
like how they themselves, have a value, which I think is so
yeah,
interesting. But something that you
yeah,
said that I would love to dive into a little bit more is you said like organizing your finances and unlearning.
yeah,
I've been going through that process and even learning how to manage having a short-term savings where it's for me to like
yeah,
spend on vacation to like a savings I don't
yep,
touch that's for long term.
yep,
I'm
yep,
29 and it's not
yeah,
in the last few years that I've really learned the benefit
yeah,
of how I invest in things or organizing
yeah.
my finances. So I'm really curious, how does someone start with that? Like what are tangible action items? Because I think for most people it can feel very overwhelming just to think about
Hmm.
what budgeting
Hmm.
looks like and what that requires of
Sure.
them. And
Yep.
also what you may have to sacrifice. You hear those people who are just
Yes.
like, I didn't vacation for a year and I paid off all my
Yeah.
student loans. And you're just
Yeah.
like, wait, how's your mental health though, sis? Like, like, are
Exactly.
you
That
okay?
is so
Are
real.
you
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
go to the
Yeah.
movies at all? Like, are you good?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how do you balance that? How do you
Yeah. Yeah.
start?
That's a good point. Um, especially to the point of like people are like, I didn't do anything. And I'm like, I can't live that life. I
Yeah,
can't live a life
no,
where I
there's
can't
got to be
like be a
balance.
little bit something. Exactly. So I mean, you said it just then. For me, and I think the first place to start is some internal work. Like you really got to figure out, what are your challenges with money? What's your relationship to money? And what do you want? Like, not everybody wants to be a millionaire. Some people just
Right.
want like a chill life. Some people don't really like travel. Like they think they like travel because like everybody is traveling. So I think the first step is that I keep a lot of journals, kind of journals for different things. I have a
Hmm.
financial journal that really just gives me opportunity to kind of spend some time thinking about like my relationship with money. And that's probably too in the weeds. Like I don't think everybody needs to do that. In terms of budget, I think there's a lot of useful and free resources on the internet that people
Hmm.
can utilize to create a budget. There's youneedabudget.com, which is an app that you can download. Also, there's mint.com, which is an app you can download that I think are both really useful. And if you don't want to pay for them, a Google Sheet. I have
That was
some
gonna
Google Sheet
say,
templates.
listen, we might turn out to be doppelgangers because I've got
Yes,
and listen, it has the Excel like little things that you do to make it
yes,
calculate. Like
yes,
I'm out
absolutely,
here making calculations and learning formulas and
absolutely.
stuff so that I
Yep,
can
yep,
because when I add a surplus or I subtract, I'm like, oh, I got extra
yep,
this month, or ooh,
yep,
am I in the red
yep.
right now? Like I need to
Exactly.
let me recheck what I was about to buy.
Yes,
Let me take that out of
yes.
the cart, So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that has but I think that what you're saying, I think a piece that sometimes people miss with that is you have to be consistent. And
Consistent.
you
Yep.
have to be disciplined, and that kind of
Yes.
requires like you were saying being
Hmm.
honest with yourself and your
Yes.
spending habits and what you want to
Yes.
be spending money on
Yes.
because
Yes.
for me personally, pre-quarantine and everything, I love going to the movies. I love film, and
Hmm.
that's like
my self-care time, and it
Yeah.
wasn't, and I like to treat myself when I do it. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to the Alamo Draft House, I'm
Yeah.
having a lamb burger and fries, and I am
Yep.
definitely having alcohol, and I'm definitely having tea to wash it all down. Like,
Yep.
and
I
that's
got you.
that's a lot of money, it's not
Yeah.
cheap, but it's something that I was like, that matters to me. That's a self-care
Yep.
thing. I'm going to allow myself to have that. Where other
Mhm.
areas though, where I'm not, where I'm being more disciplined, but it's
Mhm.
tricky. It's tricky to maintain. So I definitely think apps are helpful. I think a Google Sheet is
Mhm.
helpful. I actually don't think it's too much in the weeds to have a financial journal, because once you said that, I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I'd be curious to see like what my month to month looks like, and what
Yeah.
my and how I'm feeling about that. Like in the
How
moments
do you
where,
feel
how do
about
I
it? I
feel
think
about
it's
it?
so important to check in on the emotional part of finance because it's a hard thing to look at yourself and see the bad choices that you've made.
Ooh,
And I think
Chile.
you need measurable progress. Like you
Right.
need to see the good choices that you've made. And you need to see the progression of time, right? After a year, if I'm journaling once a month and I have 12 entries where I can say, okay, like this is actually how I grew here.
Mm-hmm.
I think financial literacy and wealth building is a muscle just like anything else that you have to keep practicing at and really doing the work to get better at it. So yeah,
Yeah, I think that's very real. I think also though, so once you get in that space and you're comfortable, I feel like the
yeah,
next step that people start thinking about, I think it depends, right? I think sometimes people struggle to know how to manage having savings or investing in
hmm
something, especially if they're not at the income level that they want to be at. And
hmm
I'm
hmm
curious, do you think that people can manage to make investments in themselves or however create savings no matter what income level they're at? Or do you think there is a different strategy that should be applied depending at, what job level you're at, or if you're still
hmm
in school, or,
hmm
if you just acquired a whole bunch of money? Like, do you think
yeah,
there are best practices people can put in place at every level?
absolutely. I do think that strategies differ depending on where you are in life. Um, I think when you're first getting out of college and you're not making the paper that you thought you were going to make because our system is real wacky that way. I think you need to be focused on paying down some of that debt and making sure that you can set yourself up for actual savings and actual investments in the future. I think that once you get a little bit of paper and once you and I like to think about it like it kind of depends on what you like to do. So you like to go to the movies. So like I like a good dinner.
Mm.
I like I will spend a good amount of money on a good dinner by myself, a glass of wine,
Yes.
just like living my best life. So I think I like to break down my finances with points of that. So like, can I have a good dinner twice this month?
Mm.
If I can, then that means that I should be able to also save this amount of money because this is how much money I'm spending on
Right.
these two dinners. For me, that's helpful because it's putting finances in a bucket of I want to do these things, so I need to make sure that I can match the other side of the coin. So
Right.
I can't
Right.
just be having fun. I also got to be like disciplined enough to put in the work to actually get both of those things accomplished. So that's kind of how I like to think about it. Um, in terms of investment, I think as soon as you can start investing safely, so not like Bitcoin is not a stupid investment, but it's a risky investment.
Here comes Bitcoin again.
I know
Bitcoin
I keep
re-entering the
coming back
chat.
to it. I know, I
Maya
know.
is not a fan of Bitcoin. Let it be known.
No, I have some. I don't. I have some satoshis or whatever, but I just think that it's not this like get rich quick scheme.
Right.
Anyway,
Fair
um,
enough. Fair enough.
I think there are safe investments you can make at any juncture in your life.
Hmm.
Um, I think the sooner you can get an individual retirement plan, like if your company doesn't offer one, like put some money into an IRA, and that can be $15 a month. You can open it through like most of the major banks, and you can put it in just like some sort of fund, and that will automatically grow. I think that should be something you do as soon as you get your first job.
Hmm.
I think you once you get some more paper, you want to think about maybe like a brokerage account. Like once you have some money that you really want to kind of play around with, get into that brokerage account.
And what is
All the
that and
while,
what does that mean for someone who's, like, unfamiliar when you say, like,
oh
play
yeah,
around with money, like, because sometimes I feel like what's missing is a whole glossary of terms for people, you know?
that's real. That's
Where
real.
you just, like, you
So
you hear all these words and you're familiar with them, but you're like, "Okay, but what does that mean?" Like, even when you say
yeah,
IRA or, like, "How do I go about finding that?" You know, like,
yeah,
what do you think is the best strategy for people learning about that, even, like, as you're speaking about it now? Like, what would be
yeah.
most
That's a good
helpful for
point.
them?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if anyone ever wants to talk, they can hit me up. Like my Instagram is Maya Emill, Emill. I might not
I
just like hit me up,
Yeah,
and
you know
I'll
what?
give you all the information I can.
I'll you know what I'll do is I'll make sure that I include in the comments, like, if people are
Mhm.
interested, DM me and I'll put them in connection with you.
Please, that would be lovely
Yeah.
because it bothers me to no end how much information people just don't share. Like
Mhm.
people have it and they hoard it, and I just, I want to share as much as I can.
Yeah.
That said, I spend a lot of time on nerdwallet.com.
Okay.
It breaks everything down super easy. Um, and I also there's just a glossary term book that I have that I found on the internet that I'm also happy to share with
Oh,
folks that kind of
please
break down
do.
some of these terminologies and
Yeah.
things. But
Okay.
just to clarify, an IRA is an individual retirement account that you can, put into some sort of fund. You can utilize like Fidelity or Vanguard or something like that, some banking institution, and that money grows over time. A brokerage account is also a place where you can buy stocks and trade stocks, but it's not tied to retirement. And so you can trade them and buy them as much as you want just in your normal life. The retirement accounts, the IRA and the 401k, are one and the same. The
Mm,
401k is provided by many employers. The IRA you do individually by yourself.
okay.
All of these things, I guarantee you can learn how to do without hiring an accountant or giving your money to,
Mm.
some
Right, right,
random
right.
bank institute. It's definitely something that you can learn to do on your own.
I mean, I think that's really comforting to hear. And I think even you listing out those resources, again, like it reminds me of when I was listening to the video on Instagram, I was like, okay, this feels applicable. This feels
Yeah,
approachable. And I think
yeah.
that for me, at least growing up, was not a very present feeling when it came to
Hmm.
money. It was kind of just
Yeah.
like, I got to pay the bills. And if there's something left over, cool. And like, and
Hmm.
I think as I got older, I definitely became, which kind of leads into my next question in a way. I became so much more interested in like investing in things that I cared about and
Yeah.
also wanting to like start building a future for myself, whether it was so like down the line I can buy a home or
Yeah.
not, or if I want to invest in a project that I care about, or my dad's an
Hmm.
artist, like whether it was
Hmm.
producing, helping him produce some work or getting him a studio space, whatever the case may be. And I think knowing how to approach things that feel a little more abstract, like a retirement plan or investing in stock, it's so
Hmm.
helpful to have resources and spaces that you can
Hmm.
show up in and know, like, okay, this can be broken down in a way that I can learn about it and not feel
Yeah.
overwhelmed by it. So I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. But in
Yeah.
terms of investing, when you were talking about um, in that video, you were mentioning that you were divesting from
Yeah.
the company I believe you work for.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you can speak about that a little bit more and what that process has been like for you, why you
Yeah.
made that choice, and
Yeah.
really how that, what the challenges of that have been and what the benefits of that has been for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So my company sponsors what they call a company match for my 401k, which is a retirement account that I have through my company. They match 5% of it. Um, with that match, however, comes uh, a list of funds that you can choose from that host a lot of companies that I don't support. They are still wrapped up and involved in the prison and incarceration complex problems
Mm,
in this country. They're supporting oil in ways that I don't want to put my money towards. They support guns in ways that I don't want to put my
Whoo,
money towards. And
there's
so,
no
and I
no
just,
redeeming qualities.
no,
No
when
redeeming
I tell
qualities.
you,
Yikes.
when I found this out, I was livid
Oh my
because
gosh,
I'm
I'm
like, at first, like,
sure.
I didn't
That's
know
the
that this
worst
is where my
part.
money was
That's the
going.
worst
Yeah.
part. And I think that's a lot of people. If
Yes.
we, and I think sometimes, and not that it's a good thing, I think sometimes people have to exist in ignorance, because if we knew
Yeah.
all the things that our
Yeah.
money was going
Honestly.
towards, or
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
felt the same way when I found out like H&M, like their whole textile recycling program, half those clothes end up in a landfill that's burning
Yeah.
and
Yes.
ruining the fucking ozone layer.
Yes. Yes.
Like, it was
Yes.
it was like, so I shouldn't be donating to you. Great.
Yeah.
Like, like
Yeah.
how much have I already given you? So
Mhm.
it is definitely shell shocking. So okay. So once
Yeah.
you got past that shock, what were the course of
Yeah.
action? What was the action steps for you?
Right. Okay. So the first thing I did was there's a website where you can essentially look up any investment fund and see an investment fund has several different companies that like roll up into this one fund that you put money into.
Okay.
And then it grows as the companies grow. You can look up any investment fund on this website and it'll tell you where all of the where all of their problems are, like how
Wow.
much they have in guns, etc. So once I found that out, I was like, all right, like this is not what I want. The divesting process is lengthy and it's hard and I'm not finished yet. So part of it is figuring out if your company is willing to match the percentage that they have said that they would match into a fund that doesn't exist within like their
Right.
system.
Got it. Okay.
Um, my company and I are still working through that. It's been 3 months since I figured this out, and I was like, I need to change, and we're still working through it. So I can't say that it's an easy thing.
Hmm.
One thing I have done though is instead of putting additional money into this account, um, as I grow my investment portfolio. All of my investment portfolios outside of my 401k, which is the majority of my money, investment money, are in either social impact investing or just companies that I support and I mess with.
Hmm.
Um, it's difficult because my company is matching 5% of this, so it's essentially free money that I'm getting from my company,
Hmm.
but it's free money that's going towards these things that I don't support. And so
Right.
to be honest, it kind of is a mind, it kind of messes with you a little
Yeah,
bit. And
yeah.
I'm like, and because you are having to morally stand on your principle
Yeah.
and potentially lose money, and like those things are honestly like a difficult thing to kind of come to
Especially
surface
when
with.
you tie in whatever financial background a person may come from, and
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
it's the strange, like, again, double-edged sword of the sacrifices
Yeah.
people make in order to like just be able to live well, or
Yeah. Yeah.
or live beyond their means, and sometimes
Yeah.
not even be in agreement with like the people or the spaces in which they're working within. It's like
Yep.
it's like
Exactly.
this weird thing that you have to choose. Whew,
Yeah.
okay. Wow.
Yeah. So it's a lot. And to be honest, I when I have more information about how to make it easier for people, I will happily share, but it's not been an easy process. When I tell you I'm on the phone with my like company's financial person once a week, that's not an exaggeration. I'm
Wow.
like, well, can we do this and can
We
we
will
do this? And
definitely have to
it's not
do a
been easy.
follow-up. We'll have to
Yeah.
just, it'll just be like Maya's corner.
Yes.
Just so we could get an update, even if it's you just sending me an audio recording, because
Yeah.
because this seems like it's quite the journey, but I almost
It
feel
is.
like, given the way that you are, I don't know, I just feel like it's good karma coming back to you, because it's
Yeah.
such a good effort that's going to be leading to something that's more equitable, and stands in
Absolutely.
something more ethical for you. And I think that
Yes.
that speaks
Absolutely.
volumes to, even if it's a dollar that you were doing that with,
Yeah.
like it's a dollar
Yeah.
that's going to something that matters to you. And I think that,
Yes.
that's what holds most weight.
Yeah. That feels good. Thank you. Thank you for that.
No worries. We all need a little encouragement sometimes.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Okay, so that's still in the process. And that, okay,
Yes.
so I know another thing that you mentioned though as well, which I thought was really great, was like, even while you were going through this journey, you've started to change like the actual spending habits you have. And what I mean by that is where you're spending your money. So I know for
Yeah.
you, a big thing was buying black. And,
Yes.
obviously that is a community that is tied to your identity. People could always,
Yeah.
buy, from Latino,
Yeah.
Latinx, companies, or from
Yeah.
Asian companies, whatever your
Yeah.
identity is. But my
Yep.
question for you is really, how did that come about for you? And, what has that journey been like for you? Why do you think it matters for people to invest
Yeah.
back into their communities,
Yeah.
specifically marginalized communities? And really,
Yeah.
how do people take those steps? Because I think sometimes, like, I saw this online the other day. Someone was saying, like, my confession is that, like, I'm shopping on Amazon all the time, and, like, it's just because it's
Hmm.
so convenient and quick, and but I really do want to start shopping local and things like that. And recently
Hmm.
I've just become like a huge fan of Etsy, because I feel like it's
Yeah.
like I can go straight to an artist and like support
Yeah.
them. And that's a way that I've tried to combat the fact that I also
Hmm.
have an Amazon Prime account. I'm like,
Yeah.
y'all, the turnaround time,
Yeah.
the turnaround
Yeah.
time is hard to
Yeah.
quit.
Yeah.
But in the same
Yeah.
token, it's kind of inspiring when someone says, like, I'm buying black and I'm making that commitment. So I'm just very curious
Yeah.
of, like, what that's been like and how that plays out for you.
Yeah.
Like, take it as far as you
I
want.
love it. I love it. It makes me so happy. I think how I frame it in my mind is like equity doesn't come quick.
Hmm.
Like that means that I might have to wait a week for something, and I just have made that commitment in my spirit to be okay with that. Like, do I really need this book in 2 days? Like, I would love it, Amazon, but like, like I don't need it. Like you think
She
you do, but you don't
just the
actually.
shade bio. She said, "Do you really need the toilet paper tomorrow, Dash, or can you, like, you've got a couple
You
rolls,
can figure
sis?
it
Like,
out. You can figure it out.
you could go to Rite Aid and get it for 99 cents. Like, come on now, come on.
Yeah,
You're right.
exactly.
You're right."
And honestly, I love when you actually think about how that money, where that money is going, and like where it's funding. I just feel like I'm building my family, like it feels
Mm.
like I am giving my cousin the computer he needed to get through school. Like I'm making sure homie down the street is eating, and that to me is enough for me to kind of just like kind
Want
of
to
make
keep
it a
doing it?
lifestyle. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's never been easier. Like there's so many black and brown and Asian shops that are doing it just as well as Amazon. And so
True.
yeah, it's just a commitment I've made. I think it didn't take a lot of convincing to me. I think people just need to know that it's out there. Like anything you want, you can get from I think a black owned space. And
Probably.
so
And we turn
yeah,
everything into gold. So, I mean,
we do. We make it better. And I
yeah.
just think to be honest, I think the quality is better.
Oh,
And maybe
there it
I'm just
is.
being maybe I'm just being whatever. But like I was talking to my parents the other day because I'm trying to learn to play the guitar.
Mm.
And it's so easy to play like pop songs or like rock songs, but try and play some blues. It's
Oh,
hard.
yeah.
Like the quality of our things, we just spend more time with it. We learn more
Yeah.
about it, and so I just think quality is much better when you
And
spend it with your people.
it's also that I think, I mean, I feel this way about every creation, everything that I purchase from, quote unquote person of color. I'll just use the politically correct term. I just feel like and not to say that anybody who doesn't identify within those communities does not like have depth in any sort of way, but
Yeah,
there's a particular, like, almost cosmic feeling that,
it is.
even when you're talking about like rhythm and blues, like, because it sources from like such unearthed emotions. Like, it
Yeah,
sources from
yeah,
someone's ancestry and their pain and
yeah,
their
yeah,
joy and their fears and their fragility and their strength. Like,
yeah.
everything is like just so intricately woven into
Absolutely. And you
into
understand it better.
yeah, into and
Yeah.
I feel that when I and you're right, like the feeling I have when I buy from a black owned business, I'm just like, yes,
Hmm.
we're like, I almost feel like in some ways I am making my contribution to rebuilding and healing
Yeah,
my
yeah,
community. Like, it makes
yeah,
me think of the black businesses that were burnt down in Tulsa, like the
yeah,
things that were taken, the things that
yeah.
were without cause, without reason. And it's like, well, I can't expect everyone in the world to want to rebuild this back with me, but I certainly can
Hmm.
do my part in that. I think
Absolutely.
that's,
Yep.
and I'm sure someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, Dash, it's literally super heavy. Like, just wanted to throw some support behind something. But, like, listen, y'all, if you ain't deep
Yeah,
with it, I don't know where you're going. Like, it's that deep. Like,
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
it
It
is.
is.
It's that
It
deep,
is.
really, when you think about it.
Hmm.
So speaking of, then like investing in Black communities, I think there was something else you mentioned about banking Black.
Yeah.
And I don't know about a lot of Black banks or
Yeah.
things like that. I feel like
Yeah.
part of the problem too, like even when you were saying like there's a Black business for everything, I don't think that people have an awareness of those things. I know I certainly don't, and I consider
Yeah.
myself to
Yeah.
have a pretty diversified feed, and like
Sure.
I try to get information from all these different places. So you know I love that it didn't take you much convincing, but I'm curious as to like, again, like what was the spark of that decision, and how did you learn
Hmm.
how to find those businesses, or what exactly? And
Yeah.
everybody's experience is different. I think some
Yeah.
people, it's really at their disposal because it's the environment they grew up in. that
Hmm.
that wasn't
Hmm.
the case for me. I went to Stoneman Douglas, which was like a school with very wealthy white Jewish kids, and I was not,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I graduated. So I'm just going to tell everyone now, my mother definitely
Oh.
lied on that address to let me go there. So confession, I have a degree. You can't do anything about it now. But
Get it, girl.
my financial experience was so
Yeah.
different, and like what
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
exposed to, like even in terms of the businesses I had access to learning
Hmm.
about. I can't say that it wasn't until
Hmm.
I came to New York that I really
Yeah.
learned about local businesses and local Black
Yeah.
businesses. So I'm curious,
Hmm.
like where do people find that information? How do they become more informed about that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a part of some communities of Black people trying to build wealth. And a lot of my information comes from that. If I'm honest with you, I
Mm,
follow a lot of folks on the socials who are talking about it. This dude Carl Joseph Black, who is just like in it, like he's
mm,
about it. I follow, and I think he's a really great resource. Um, I Google a lot in terms of Black banks, though. I think like for me, maybe this is my upbringing. My parents always banked with the Black bank in our city, which is a
mm,
credit union. And so that for me was one of the easier things just because I kind of knew about it. But honestly, there is a section of Twitter and social media that is about Black wealth. And I think I was one of those people who's like anti-capitalism. I'm not about this life. I want everybody to like
mm.
be winning. But I
Yeah.
think, and somebody said this recently, I can't remember who, but they talked about capitalism, and what we're seeing right now is not capitalism. What we're seeing right now is
Mhm.
feudalism, and that is what we need to be fighting against. And I
Ooh.
felt that in my spirit.
Oof.
And
Right in the chest.
while I can't say that I'm 100% more socialist than I am capitalist, but I do think there are a lot of learnings in terms of reconfiguring the system that is in this country to better benefit Black people that we have to learn from, uh, having an understanding of capitalism. And I say all that to say is there are sects of uh, social media that is all about Black wealth, but I think um, you have to take that with a grain of salt in terms of like what you want to be a part of in terms of Black wealth, because like the capitalist thing is problematic on all sides, like no
Mhm.
matter no matter the race, gender, etc.
Right.
But yeah, I think for me it's following a lot of a lot of that, and just kind of developing my point of view from reading a bunch of stuff. I read a lot of books too.
I love that. I remember you mentioning one of the books was Our Black Year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a great book. It's about a couple who just spent a year only buying things from Black people, and I won't spoil it, but it's definitely worth a read.
I love it.
Yeah, it's
A
interesting. It's
tease, a
hard, but it's
tease
good.
for everyone.
Yeah,
um,
I'm in TV, and so I know the importance of not spoiling
oh my
things.
gosh, I love that. Oh, I might, I started this, I mean, the podcast now, this is going to be the third episode. This is now we're a month in, and it's like so interesting because I'm getting to there's like different segments that I do. And one of them is the
Yeah,
rec room where I just kind of give recommendations on like films, TV, books, music, different things that
yeah,
I love. And I'm realizing like it's always someone who's like either recommending something to me or like I find it by way of people. So I'm like, why don't I just
Yeah.
like record people's recommendations? Be like, hey, this one's from Maya.
Oh, that's a good idea. I love a good recommendation. I
Yeah.
love curation, all that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when Maya, I think maybe we are doppelgangers. I don't know what's happening. We're literally rocking hats and glasses right now, everybody. Like, come on.
And the over ear headphones.
Yes,
That's
come on,
real. That's how you
energy.
know.
Come on, we are in sync right now.
Oh,
But I think that's really dope what you were saying just about like, black banking and just the way that you become informed about that. And I also want to just make a note to people because I think sometimes people are under the impression that this is only applicable to like black people. Like this is
mhm.
applicable to anyone. Like honestly,
Yeah.
like investing back in marginalized communities is not just for marginalized people to
Mhm.
be doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
That's a great
like
point. Yeah.
everyone should be becoming informed about this. Everyone should be looking at, what systems they contribute to that they might want to, reconsider, the value of that or like what, I
Sure.
think of oh my gosh, I can't think of this it's this crafting store in Florida. Maybe it's better that I don't name them so they don't try and sue me. But they literally, I remember learning during quarantine that they had like cut out the healthcare that they were providing to their employees. And
Yeah. I know what you're
you
talking
know
about, and
exactly
we
what I'm
won't
talking
mention that
about.
store. Yeah.
It who shall not be named. Shout out to Harry
Yeah.
Potter. I remember like learning that and being like, yeah, I can't be down with that. Like I'm not
Yeah.
shopping there. And it's so
Mhm.
uncomfortable because there are certain conversations I'll have with friends and I'll mention it and they're like, yeah, but if we cared about every single thing and I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like I'm not perfect by any means,
Yeah.
but I think there's certain lines. If you start with one line that can't be
Yeah.
crossed, then I think it makes it
Absolutely.
easier to create different boundaries about how you
So
want,
good.
where you want your money to go and who it's
Yes.
going to and what it's showing
Mhm.
up in. Like
Mhm.
I have to think about those things now. I think those things are no longer separate. And I think,
Mhm.
people are starting to realize that. So it's very cool that, it's cool how informed you are and it's cool that you're spreading the
Mhm.
word. I think that that's a really, like you were saying in the very beginning, like people shouldn't hold on to the things they know. That's how we grow. The more you know, the more you
Yeah.
grow. You
Yeah.
you should share
Yeah.
the wealth. Oh, I love a good
Mhm.
pun. So
And also, I love I love what you just said about kind of, once you know a little bit, do a little bit. Like once you know a lot, do a lot. Like
yeah,
wealth happens over time, right? Like it's not easy. It's a constant discipline. And so I love the framing and the outlook of, all right, well, start here. This is what you have in your hands. This is what you have available. Start here, do a little bit, and kind of move along that way. I just think that's a super healthy, like, yes, like all of life, just like try a little bit.
try a little bit, and
Yeah,
because the thing is, you can't get it all right the first time. It's similar to what you were saying.
yeah,
There are so many habits and mindsets and mentalities
yeah,
that have to be
yeah,
unlearned. And I think there
yeah,
has to be a little bit of grace applied. Like, I even there are moments like where you kind of also have to like celebrate yourself. Like I remember one of my
yeah,
roommates asking me like, they were getting their first credit card and they were asking me about it and I was able to like easily explain it to them and I was like, "Okay, I'm an
yeah,
adult. I'm grown. Like
yeah,
I know how to
yeah,
explain credit to somebody. Like I know
yeah,
like
yeah.
how to explain to them like the importance of like paying back more than your minimum. Like I know like how to
Mhm,
talk about these things. And I think
mhm,
when you realize that, it helps you to have a little more confidence, in yourself
yes,
as well. Because I think a lot of times
mhm,
people aren't confident in their spending
mhm,
habits or confident in,
mhm,
in believing that they can make more money. And I think when you
yeah,
start there, you'll actually be surprised at how much more value you find in the things
yeah,
you're purchasing, the things you're investing in
mhm,
what you have or don't have. Like I think your
mhm,
gratitude extends in a different sort of way. So that's, I love that. I love that you're in that space. And I love that I'm inspired by you to be more so in
I'm
that
inspired by
space.
you. I'm like, we need to be friends in real life,
Stop.
okay?
Yeah.
Like once the pandemic is over, can we please be friends?
So fantastic. Absolutely. Will you accept my friend request, Maya?
Yes, yes, I would do that. I would make sure I go on Instagram
Oh my
and do
God.
that.
So we have like about 10 minutes left, and this has been honestly this exceeded my expectations, which like
Good.
I'm not even surprised because I'm telling you, y'all, I saw this Instagram video and I was like, her. I want to talk to her about this. She knows
Oh, that's kind.
stuff I want to know, and I need to learn from her, and other people need to learn from her. So I want her to have a platform, even though, like, who am I? But still, But my last question for you, and just because I thought it was so interesting, I had never heard about this before until you mentioned it in the video, which is the worth of the black dollar versus the worth of the white dollar. Listen,
Girl.
listen, we've got 10 to 15 minutes. I give you the floor. I give you the floor.
Listen,
Take it away.
I I have so much to say about this.
Exactly. And it's a good thing we're
These
on a
stats
podcast. Take your time.
are alarming.
Wow.
They're alarming.
Uh-oh.
When you look at African Americans, Black folk, we own, what is it, 1.6% of wealth in this country, which is absurd. I can't. I need to. I mean, I just.
Process.
Okay. I didn't know this question was coming, and so I wish I would. I wish I had more
Listen.
stats that I could pull up.
Honestly, you
Okay.
can, because I can edit. So literally, if
Here's
there's
one.
more you want to pull up, please do.
Stat number one.
Okay.
In 2019, like last year.
First of all, pause for a second, y'all, because Maya said, I wish that like I just had more time to prepare because like I just want to pull up some stats. Immediately turns to her laptop, clicks on a tab, and is like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go.
Oh, yes. That's another thing. Have a tab that's all financial stuff.
Come
like,
on now. Yes, come on. Okay. Hit me with the stats. I'm ready.
In 2019, the median white household held $188,000 in wealth. So that's just like the average amount of money that like an average household in America, white family, held 188,000, compared to the average Black household, 24,000. That is 7.8 times more money.
Wow.
that the average white family holds. And that is the most alarming.
It's ghastly.
And this is 2019. This is not even like, this
Yikes.
is not old information.
I wish you hadn't told me this. Wait a minute. Because that just like, like when your heart just goes, boom. Yeah, that is. Okay, so see, that information is disheartening, and that's never the space that I want to stay in. You see, like, I feel like that's where that you end up feeling defeatist. So, like, what do we do with that information? What do we do with that information?
So, I mean, part of it is like figuring out what part you want to play in this. Not everybody wants to be, a CEO of a company that is going to hire a ton of Black and brown people, pay them well, give them health, equity, etc. If you only got a couple dollars and you want a book and you live in Philly, go to Uncle Bobby's. And I only say Uncle Bobby's because I have a very big crush on Mark Lamont Hill. So everybody go support him.
FYI, just in case you're listening, come on now. Yes, come on.
So if you got a little bit of money, go to the Black bookstore, go to the Black coffee shop. If you got a lot of money, make a concerted effort to utilize your access, your company, to make them do some things. My company, when all of this stuff happened this summer with the Black Lives Matter movement, they decided that they would match all of our donations up to a certain amount. So I called and went on Instagram and got all my friends, and we essentially ended up sending like $12,000 to Black Lives Matter. And this was just like small donations. Like my friends are not rich people. It was just like, we got to do this and we can maximize our impact. So stuff like that, like small things that you can make these companies be held accountable for. Another one is real estate. Real estate is a super huge factor when it comes to wealth building in this country. And there's an organization that everybody should look up. It's called NACA, NACA.
Okay.
And it is an organization that is a nonprofit focused on creating more low and middle income real estate opportunities for people of color. Real estate is rent is so expensive.
Rent is New York too City. Expensive. The rent is too damn high.
It's too expensive.
It's ridiculous. Listen, this is how ridiculous rent is in New York. myself, my roommate, many people I know had to go home to
Yes,
save money in order to
yes,
pay the rent of the
yes.
apartment which they were not living in.
That's absurd. That
That's
is absurd.
absurd. And yet I
Yeah.
have my mama out here asking me, why don't I just buy a condo? How?
How? How, Sway?
How,
How,
Sway?
Sway?
You do not have the answers.
You do not. Oh, oh my
It's
goodness.
crazy. So it's
Yeah.
it's interesting, and it's funny you say real estate, because I was saying before, like, wanting to save up to buy a house, or like
Yeah.
even a brownstone. That's the dream manifested for me, all. Like, it's
Yeah.
that,
I love it.
so it's definitely important, I think, to even know those
Hmm.
areas that you should be even
Hmm.
looking at, or those spaces
Yeah.
where you can do more with the black dollar. And I remember you saying
Yep.
something about how long the black dollar lasts in
Hmm.
certain markets versus the white dollar. I think it was something like
Hmm.
6 hours versus 17 days. And I was like, these numbers are making me upset. Me and my homegirl,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're not here for
6
it.
hours. 6
That's
hours in the Black community. And I always break that stat down because I feel like people don't actually understand what that means. Like that means that if I if I just get paid, uh within 6 hours I'm spending that money on some sort of white institute or in some store like H&M, like we mentioned
mm-hmm.
before, or some craft store that ain't got nothing to do with me or helping my people elevate out of poverty, as
Ooh,
opposed to the white dollar, which will stay in the community for 17 days. So a white person gets paid, they can spend it at so many different organizations. And then that money kind of uplifts their community in a very real way. And so that's one of the reasons why I think it's just super important. And not easy to do, but necessary to do. And I think it's easier than people think it is.
I love
Google
that.
some stuff.
Yes. Okay. So I want to close it out with this is the very, very last question. And we got to always keep it positive on Just a Dash. We got to twist it so that even with all the boo sha sha, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So,
Yeah,
my last question is for you. What has been your favorite purchase from a Black owned business? What has been, and take a minute to think about it, but
yeah,
what is something that you are really happy that you put your money towards and that you
yeah.
supported?
Okay, this is probably too typical of a thing, but all of my hair care products now come from Black-owned
Yes.
businesses, and I have so the hat that I have on right now, it's got like a silk lining. It's
Wow.
long for when I have
Tell
like my
them.
dreads. Now I have a fro and it's comfortable
Yes.
and it fits my head so well. I also got this comb that helps me detangle. That is really wonderful.
I love it.
I love all these things. I buy most of my books from Uncle Bobby's, Marco Mount Hill. Again, love him. So every book that I purchase, I get from there, which is this bookstore in Philly that I love, and my books are treasures to
I
me.
love that.
Um, yeah,
That's great. I'm gonna toss
those are my
it.
things.
My favorite so far. This is not based in New York, y'all. This is based in DC. But there's this place called Calabash Tea, and it's a
Mm,
Black-owned tea shop. They sell food, but they also, the way they give you your tea, they ask you literally, "How are you feeling today?" And they base like the herbs and like what they put in it based off energy work. Like, it's just very
yeah,
mindful of just like the space you need to show up in. And I remember one time I went in there and I was like, yeah, I'm just feeling stuck. And they were like, in your mind or digestive? And I was like, okay.
oh,
I was like,
that's the whole
wait.
vibe.
We get real meta with it, like it was such an
Yeah,
experience. And,
yes,
and I believe it's also vegan. So just like very intersectional and like very thoughtful, even on their social media when they're talking about, mindfulness. So if y'all, if anybody who's listening is in DC, y'all should check out Calabash Tea. I really love it. My sister introduced it to me, and it is one of my
yeah,
favorite businesses to just support time and time again.
yeah.
But with
Have you heard
that,
of? Sorry, one more thing. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Have you heard
no,
of Ivy's tea?
no. What is Ivy's
Okay,
tea?
so it's a Black woman who she's great because her tea is just like it's called stuff I want my tea to be called, and she's got like a china set with like spoons that say "Get it, girl" and stuff like that. And
Oh
I'm just like,
wow. Come on,
this is what
encouragement.
I want from my tea experience. And it sounds similar to the DC place, which I'm gonna have to ask you about because next time I'm in DC, I'm gonna have to go there because
Yes,
I love that idea.
oh, absolutely. I'll share their profile with you. They're awesome, and like, I mean, obviously, I'm sure. I think they're definitely still open even with COVID happening, and obviously they're being mindful
Okay.
of how that's happening. But it's really definitely a good spot. I have to check out Ivy's teas. I love. I've said this before. I have a mug of tea right next to me. I only drink tea. Like I love
Yeah,
tea. I love sipping tea, and I love
I love
spilling
it.
tea, but only with cool people like Maya.
Okay.
Which,
Love it.
with that being said, thank you so much for this conversation because I honestly like as a millennial, as a black woman, as a black person, I think, there's a lot of spaces that we have to learn how to occupy as we get
Yeah,
older that we're not,
yeah,
informed of, that other people
yeah,
have access or opportunity to. And even someone who doesn't identify as me, I sometimes
yeah,
might feel like they are not as informed about things, and that can make someone feel like, I don't know what I'm doing, or I won't ever get ahead, or progress won't ever
yeah.
be made, or I won't ever be
Mm,
able to move, or I won't be able to find this
hmm.
job. And I just, extend yourself some grace, y'all. I hope that,
Yeah,
I hope you learned, a lot from this episode and the resources that are available to you. And I think most of all that I hope you're inspired to realize that you can learn it on your own. Obviously Maya did. Sis is out here with her own tab, like you like you can. And and that it's not something to be overwhelmed by. I think the number one thing I want to remind people too is like, and I was talking to my dad about this, money is something that humans created. This is not
yes,
something that like came with the world, which means that,
yep.
systems change, systems can be adapted, and you can learn how they work and you can learn how
Hmm.
to operate within them so
Hmm.
that you can
Hmm.
play the game until you can change the game. You know? T?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And there's always time. There's still time.
And there's still time. And
Yeah.
that's it. And that's it. And we're all done.
You're wonderful. Oh my goodness. What?
Oh my god, I'm gonna
This
stop
is great.
recording. Maya's out here like, I'm keeping that. I'm keeping that up until this point. I'm not letting this episode fade
You
out
should
until
definitely
everyone
keep it.
hears that. Gas me up, Maya. I'm gonna stop recording. Okay, y'all, we made it to another end of another episode. Y'all, Maya is incredible, isn't she? I just like it's so incredible to converse with somebody who has the energy she has and the spirit that she has and the generosity that she has. And I just met her and I'm really excited that y'all got to literally hear me becoming friends with a person via this podcast. Like how cool is that? I love that this is just a space to connect with people who are just so willing to share something that they learned and has impacted and changed their life for the better. So shout out to Maya, y'all. She really is just a magical human being to converse with, and that was an exciting conversation to have. And honestly, was really inspiring to get me back on track because I don't know about y'all, but there are some months where I'm not as consistent as I should be when it comes to my money and my coin. And I think just a reminder to allow myself some grace, but also remind myself that better spending habits, better money habits, it's an investment in myself and not something to be afraid of. It's something to learn more about, it's something to explore. So shout out to Maya. And now it's time for the rec room. I feel like I'm going to say that a different way each time. Maybe I need to get like I need to do like little musical sounds for the segments cuz I have just a dash. So it might be nice to, switch it up a little bit. But today in the rec room, and just so y'all know, I have traded out my tea for a glass of wine, okay? Some dry white wine. And listen, it's kicking. It is kicking in and it is very good. But I have a couple of recommendations for y'all. I'm not going to make it too long, even though I do want to get a little bit into framing Britney Spears. But I have 3 quick ones before I get into framing Britney Spears. The first is The Terrell Show. So The Terrell Show is this YouTube channel, and the host, it's obviously the host's name is Terrell. But this show, it just came back. It was on hiatus for a little bit because the host actually went through a pretty rough personal experience last year. He came back. It's great to see his comeback. And the Terrell Show is basically a show where he interviews different musicians, but these musicians are typically, first of all, they're typically people of color, but they're also people who are underrated, essentially. You know, whether he really loves gospel and R&B, so you're really getting a lot of those sorts of musicians, but he also sometimes has some people who are a little bit more unconventional, a little bit out of the box. It's a wonderful show because he's a great interviewer altogether. So my favorite interviewer really of all time is Sean Evans from Hot Ones, which we'll have to get into Hot Ones in another rec room because Hot Ones is actually my favorite YouTube series. It's my favorite YouTube channel, really. But The Terrell Show is a close second. And because it's of how he interviews, I just find him to really ask like very wonderful questions of his guests, but in a way that just allows them to open up about their experiences and even how they feel about being underrated or how they navigate spaces of wanting to become more successful. And he always just hypes them up. The other thing is he plays this game with them, a song association game, where he basically gives them a word and they have to sing a song, you know, with the word in it. They have 10 seconds. And the way, bro, these people can sing, okay? Like, these people can blow. Like, the riffs they go through, the tone, the way, the ability, the things they can do with their voice. I mean, at one point, he had Lala Hathaway on there, which Lala Hathaway, y'all, can sing 2 chords at the same time. She makes 2 different chords in her throat vibrate, bro. She sounds like a machine. And it's just, it blows my mind. So I recommend the Terrell Show if you really love music. Since we started off with the Grammys, we're going to close out with a little bit of music. It's just a great way also to discover artists that you probably would vibe with that you can add to your playlist. And like, it's a cool way to discover new music, underrated music, help it get bigger, help it grow, help these people, you know, make their dreams come true. But really love the Terrell Show and very much recommend the Terrell Show. All right, let me take a swig of my wine. Next to, or second up, I should say, is Bloom. So I don't know how I didn't recommend this in the very first episode of Just a Dash. I accidentally stumbled upon this show. Actually, one of my best friends did. Accidentally stumbled upon this show on HBO Max. And it is a competition show about florists. This show, last year, discovering it, I ended up watching it 3 times, the entire season, because the challenges were just so stunning. I love plants in general. I love flowers. I love nature. I love gardens. I just think that that's beautiful. Like a botanical garden, that would be an amazing date. Can you imagine? So I loved everything about it, the aesthetics of it. And the judges were whack, in my opinion, I'm just going to say. Not necessarily because of how, I'm sure they're great people, but their judging styles were just not for me. I felt that it was such a beautiful show that it was kind of strange how they would offer such harsh critiques. It was a little too cutthroat, is what I'm basically trying to say, for something that's supposed to literally just be so aesthetically pleasing and help the person who's watching it really just be inspired by all the blooms and blossoms that they're witnessing. So I'm not recommending the show because necessarily of the competition of it aspect of it. I'm recommending it because the challenges will blow you away, y'all. There's literally a challenge where they have to recreate Vincent van Gogh's painting using flowers on a giant canvas. And if you can't even picture that, you should go watch the show because it's really just so stunning to just see what they create with flowers. And it honestly, I love when I get to learn something new, one, but also when I get to look at something in a different way. That show made me reconsider flowers. Everywhere I go now, I see how floral scapes are made and I see how designs are made. And I'm just like, this is so cool. And this is talent. I think sometimes people think talent is just singing or dancing or acting. And being able to inspire people through color and nature and design, that's a talent, bro. Like the way people do floral scapes at weddings, when they do it when you're window shopping and you're looking, you know, at the front of a, what do they call those things? I guess a window when you're window shopping. But, you know, it's just incredible. There's another challenge where they decorate a bike with flowers. You know what? Let me stop because I don't want to keep spoiling it, because part of the surprise is honestly the challenge when you're told what the challenge is and you're like, oh my gosh, what can they do with that? And honestly, the contestants are also just amazing. They have the same sort of vibe as the Great British Bake Off, which I don't know if any of y'all, if you're listening and you watch that show, I think you might know what I mean. But that show, as much as it's a competition show, it's also about camaraderie. And that's very much reflected in the contestants of this show. So make sure y'all check out Bloom if you haven't before. It's on HBO Max, which is different from HBO Go. And then the last one before we get into Britney Spears is RTS Life Hacks. Excuse me. This is an Instagram. It's basically an Instagram profile with just videos of people talking about different experiences they've had in their lives. But like, fair warning, these are very intense experiences. I mean, I'm talking about people talking about clown dominatrix fetishes and why they feel empowered to, be in that role and do that with their lives. I'm talking about people who share stories about, near-death experiences. Like, it's just the most extreme, wild stories. And some of them are a little intense. Some of them, it's like, they're triggering, they're traumatizing. They do a great job of like putting warnings in the captions and whatnot. But there are some stories where I'm just like, this is wild. Being a human is insane. And I don't really go on RTS Life Hacks that frequently, but when I do, or when it pops up in my feed and I watch that video, I'm just like, wow. What humans go through in a lifetime, what humans go through in a year, what humans go through in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and what they're able to look back upon and be able to recount, it's crazy. The human lifespan is crazy, and what we experience within it is crazy. So RTS Life Hack, RTS stands for real, true shit. And when I tell you, you know what, how did I not notice that before? And in the bio, it says nuggets of realness. And when I tell you it's nuggets of realness, whoo, Chile. I mean, mental hospital stories, living in a limo. Wow, these are crazy. Sex work, racism. Where do fetishes come from? Arab girl problems. Like, I mean, they go through fake Uber, haunted house, different kind of horny. Like, I'm telling you, it's literally just the most random, it's real true shit. So check out RTS Life Hacks. This is basically what I'm saying. It's a great Instagram, and I don't know why more people aren't following it. The person who creates it, actually, his name is Dun Charlie, and he also doesn't have that many followers either. That's wild to me. So help my man's blow up. I mean, I don't know much about him, but this is a good Instagram. All right, so let me take another swig of my wine, and then we're going to get into framing Britney Spears. Okay, y'all, framing Britney Spears. Before we get started, previously I called this show Bloom. It's actually called Full Bloom, so that's my bad. Full Bloom is on HBO Max. But anyhow, let's jump into Britney Spears, y'all. Framing Britney Spears. So this documentary, it's actually called The New York Times Presents Framing Britney Spears. And it's not I don't believe it's the first documentary of 2021, but it's certainly a standout one. It was a strong start. It was directed by Samantha Stark and produced by Jason Stahlman, Sam Dolnick, and Stephanie Price. I don't know who any of those people are. What I do know is that the documentary revolves around the career of Britney Spears, who I'm sure at this point everyone knows who Britney Spears is, but she's an American singer. She became really popular, I would say, in the early 90s. That's definitely when I was introduced to Britney Spears, and I don't think I really need to go in depth about her career, but I think most people are aware that she was this pop princess. She started out very young in the industry, and eventually she climbed her way to success, but she always... for me personally, Britney Spears, why I love her, she was my first introduction to secular music in a lot of ways. Not in a lot of ways. She was my first introduction. I think I was like maybe in third or fourth grade, and I remember getting the Baby One More Time CD. And I loved it. I was obsessed with Soda Pop. I was obsessed with Lucky, which was her second album, I think. But she really just, for me, I loved Britney Spears. She was just this, I guess the best way to describe it is she was all these different sorts of representations of what a woman could be, or what a young girl could be. You know, she was sweet, she was kind, she was flirty, but she was never submissive. And she was never wholesome either, which is such a strange thing, I think, that people attach to young women and young pop stars, but she was never that. She was real. And I think that was the most difficult part of watching this documentary. It was watching the personality that actually attracted me to her music and to her aesthetic and to her sound. Just slowly seeing how that was dimmed over time, it was difficult because she was a boss. She was a badass. She was calling the shots. She was knowing the tea and who's sipping it. So it was difficult to watch her be shrunk by men around her. And it was difficult to know that in some capacity, we as a society allowed that unknowingly and knowingly. So the reason that I'm recommending Framing Britney Spears, which was, again, created by the New York Times. So I think that alone lets you know that the New York Times isn't perfect by any means, but I do think there is a great balance of how they storytell. I do think that they have people who don't take accountability in the documentary, and then you have people who really dissect different areas where pop culture, how they basically folded on top of each other in impactful and influential ways. And I'll give an example of that in a moment, but really the reason why I'm recommending this is because it's really eye-opening and a great, I don't want to say example or case, but it truly is, of how gender constructs and roles and expectations have shaped the lives of so many women, including women that we consider to be strong icons and examples in our lives. Like I said before, Britney Spears was my first introduction to secular music. And for that reason, she holds a really dear place in my heart. I have a soft spot for her, despite the fact that her music, to me, at this point, really is a step above mediocre. Like, it's for, and this is the thing, there's music for everything. So I don't even want to say that and say that, as something definitive, because the reality is not all music has to be super in depth and like literally tell you about the seventh plane of life. Like, some songs are just for having a good time, getting ready with your girlfriends, your boyfriends, your anybody around you, like having a good time, kikiing, getting ready to go to the club, or up in your car having a good time, saying fuck you to that guy. Like, there's music for every sort of situation. And I definitely think Britney Spears' music falls into the category of having a good time. That being said, her music hasn't really evolved to me. So my love for Britney Spears is no longer tied to her as a musician, but actually tied to her as a human being. So it's interesting. It was just interesting to see the trajectory of how people ruined this woman's life, and strictly because they couldn't figure out what type of woman she was. They couldn't figure it out, but they couldn't accept the fact that this woman was in fact in tune with her sexuality and her sensuality, and had no problem placing that in her music and in her experiences, but yet she was facing this dichotomy of wanting to present a certain image to the public and being marketed a certain way. So it was crazy alone how the documentary opened up. I mean, sis was being asked as a child performing if she had a boyfriend by some host who could be her grandfather. And then when she said no, he was like, what about me? Like, what are we doing? The sexualization of a young girl who was then punished for owning and celebrating that sexuality is mind-boggling. And it's truly a revelation on what it means to be a woman in this world. And that's really just scratching the surface. So some key takeaways that really stuck out for me. Obviously, we know that Justin Timberlake essentially threw Britney Spears under the bus. And this is going to be kind of a unpopular opinion. And to give context, I think the biggest thing to know is that when their relationship ended in 2002, and they were a big deal, obviously, this is Justin Timberlake, the quote unquote lead of NSYNC, although like, y'all, it's like JT, like, how are we, like, JT was great, but like JC, y'all, listen, I'm just a JC fan. My man was killing it and not getting the recognition he deserved. But needless to say, JT was the lead of NSYNC, and here he goes dating the biggest pop star on the planet. Not even in America, on the planet, y'all. So when they broke up, it was devastating. It was a huge deal, like forever iconic. The jeans outfit, we'll never forget it, whether they're together or not. Sorry, Jessica Alba. Nope. Sorry, Jessica Biel. But shortly after their relationship ended in 2002, Justin released a music video called Cry Me a River, and it was clearly about Britney Spears. The rumors were unconfirmed, but like people were under the impression that she cheated and that she betrayed his trust. And that was really, the onset. I think a lot of things had already started, and they go through the timeline of it, and it's pretty insane, but that definitely catapulted the criticism she received to a next level altogether. And I don't want to excuse Justin Timberlake's behavior whatsoever. That's not where I'm coming from. But y'all know me. I guess I try to look at every side of the story. So this might be an unpopular opinion, or maybe not. I think people can understand this comprehensively. I don't want to say that I think Justin Timberlake was a victim in all this. I don't think he was at all. That's the wrong language. But I think he was a pawn in the machine. So, here's a young, impressionable white man with privilege who only really would have this trajectory in life when we're honest with ourselves. And by this trajectory, I mean there would be some point in Justin Timberlake's career, just by the nature of his identity, where he'd have to apologize for some sexist behavior he participated in. The world revolves around white men, straight white men. They were going to mess up at some point. Like, let's just say the tea. That's what it is. And I mean, we can be angry about it, but it's nothing we didn't already know. And it's something we chose to ignore, quite frankly, because my man's career has been thriving, even post-Janet, y'all. I was a teenager when all that stuff went down. And admittedly, the 2020 Vision album, whatever it's called, it's one of my favorites because of the production. So all that to say, Justin Timberlake's apology was whack. And so was his behavior. But I think his faults lie more with him being a puppeteer. He was puppeteered so easily. And he was probably pretty immature about getting his heart broken by the biggest pop star on the planet. So it's not to cut him any slack, but I think dissecting that narrative a little bit more is important, because I think, for me at least, it helps me mitigate my disappointment and my anger in this person. I don't think I put Justin Timberlake on this pedestal where I expected more of him. I can't. That would mean that I have to expect more of the industry. That would expect that I'd have to expect more of society. And that's not realistic. Like, none of this surprises me. I think something else that was also really, so one of the people on the documentary, his name is Wesley. I can't even remember his last name right now, but he's the co-host of one of my favorite podcasts called Still Processing. And he really does an excellent job of just really outlining the layers of pop culture and how they influence each other, and just like the spider web that, occurs when we look at how different things in pop culture influence each other, how they inspire one another, how they lead to the detriment or downfall of a person. It's just really, he's almost like an anthology of knowledge when it comes to pop culture. So I'm really a fan of his. But he was in this documentary, to my pleasant surprise, and he spoke about how the lens of Britney Spears' sexuality and the increased, I think, interest in her sexuality, it was coupled at the same time when Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton, their scandal broke out, obviously. I don't need to go into it. I think at this point, there's so many jokes, which is another conversation to talk about. There's so much commentary about that situation that took place with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. And at the same time, you have the biggest pop star on the planet who's starting to grow up and starting to discover her own sensuality and sexuality and expressing that. And now we're looking at sexuality with women as something that is detrimental to society, something that leads to the downfall of great men. And it's disgusting because they allowed that to then be the narrative that was placed on her and destroyed this woman's life. And I will say that the film also speaks largely about the conservatorship that she's under by her father, which I do think is obviously a huge part of this documentary. And the reason I'm discussing all this other stuff is because it's led to that, situation. A couple other things I just want to highlight because I don't want to get too in the weeds and give too much away. Diane Sawyer and the paparazzi. It's very interesting how they dissect how the media and how the culture we've created of paparazzi really impacted this woman's life. And I think something that really stuck out to me was one of the photographers who basically, he was the person who captured the umbrella incident. At one point, whoever is doing the documentary asked this man, like, why didn't you just leave her alone? And my man is just like, she never gave us a clue after, during all these years that, I don't appreciate you guys, leave me alone. And the interviewer is like, how about when she said, leave me alone? And my man goes, well, leave me alone for the day, but not leave me alone like forever. And I'm just like, wow, the things that we say to ourselves to justify behavior that is unethical is absolutely disturbing. And so it was just a great way, and when I say great, I don't mean in a good way, but it was a great way to have a better understanding of what led to this woman essentially losing her mind. And I don't mean that in a negative way either, because they broke her psyche. And it's just incredibly important that I think we acknowledge that this person didn't get there by their own volition. So I think that's a huge part to take away from this documentary. I think the last piece that I will say why I think it's a great documentary to watch, why I think even if you're not a fan of Britney Spears, it's a great documentary to watch, is because it really speaks to the lack of empathy and understanding associated with mental health. And it's funny because this is from 13 years ago, but I would still say in 2021, there are moments where the insensitivity, the crass jokes we make, the way that we dismiss certain experiences in regards to mental health, it's something that we should all be more mindful of. And, the film, there's several archive clips that they show in this documentary, and they just basically show Britney Spears being a punchline. And it's really just so, even on Family Feud, I'm talking about on family-friendly shows. And at one point, a contestant on Family Feud is just saying that she's lost her sanity. And the audience, laughs and applauds. We were so comfortable dragging a human being down. And I see it again, even with someone like Kanye West. And again, every time I bring up Kanye West, I think to myself, that's an onion. That's super layered. There's so much more to it. But I do think we do sometimes have the same approach when we're talking about mental health, and we're not really considering the space that this person is operating from and the reality they're operating from, or what they're trying to escape. So I do think, it really allows us to sit back and recognize that, oh my gosh, this was going on and I didn't do something about it, either because I didn't know or I didn't realize that it was something important that I should, be more mindful and more informative about. So really what I'm saying is watch Framing Britney Spears, because I think it allows you a little more insight into a woman who offered her talents and her gifts to us, and we mishandled and misused, and whom we owe a great apology to as a collective group of people, because no human should have been put in the position that she was put in. So watch Framing Britney Spears. Watch the other recommendations that I mentioned earlier. I do think you'll enjoy them. They're definitely, fan faves personally. Obviously, I wouldn't be recommending them otherwise, but, Framing Britney Spears, it was a good one. And there are so many other documentaries, y'all, that I enjoy watching, that I love watching, that I'll share as well. I didn't get into it, but there is a documentary on Paris Hilton. It's a little tougher to watch because her privilege just shines through so prominently, but that story is also really intriguing and gives you a different lens of who Paris Hilton is and the persona she created. So I can get more into that in another episode. But yeah, those are my recommendations, y'all. It has been a long week. I don't know about anybody else, but I've been balancing so much with my day job. Planning events in a virtual space is no joke. So, it's really great to have a release where I can talk about things just from my point of view and kind of just share my opinion. And I'm really just so grateful that y'all are listening and y'all are here sharing this space with me. And it's going to be a great week. It's the middle of the week, actually, if you're listening to this or whenever you're listening to this. I hope whatever day you're having, if it's not a good one, that it gets better. And I hope if you're having a great day that you celebrate that and you celebrate yourself. And, as always, make good choices, be good people. Remember you're made of stardust. And the world is a better place because you are in it. And also hashtag free Britney. So I'll catch you on the airwaves next time, sweet peas. Till then, keep it right, keep it tight. Much love.